We are going to talk about meta-modeling today. Now, I know a lot of you are modelers, a lot of you are meta-modelers. What do we need to talk about? Well, meta has a very interesting history. And in fact, it has a long history, and it's now gotten into the popular culture. If you talk to your kids, you'll know that they talk about going meta. So what does going meta mean? Well, here's an example. This is from a cartoon in the US, and the old lady is looking for hidden cameras and recording devices, and she says to her husband she knows they're being bugged because this darn cartoonist has been putting on this comic strip every day. So there she is looking at herself, talking about looking at herself, talking about looking at herself. That's what going meta is. It is when the subject that you're talking about is talking about the subject that you're talking about. And I can actually go on that way for a long time. But instead of going on forward, let's go back and see where meta came from. A lot of people don't realize that it goes back a long way to this guy. All right, so we're talking about the 4th century BC, and Aristotle. You may have heard of him. Aristotle published a series of books collectively called Physics. Actually, a lot of philosophers did that because physika means on nature in Greek. So this was just books about nature. Well, after he did that, he wrote another series of books that weren't named. Later on, people who cataloged Aristotle's work called them metaphysika, which literally in Greek means after physics. These were the books that came after the books that were called physics. Well, it turns out that what Aristotle talked about in metaphysics was a reflection on the why of things. So he was really, if you look at it, we have nature. He did physics, which was reflections on nature, and then in metaphysics, he reflected on his reflections on nature. That is where we get meta from. Now, he didn't call it metaphysics. You notice he thought the metaphysics part was the more important one. He called that first philosophy. So that was the foundation. Physics, what happens in nature, the discussion of nature was second philosophy. So the first causes were in metaphysics. And we'll see that you step up on meta, and in meta, you define what happens at the next level down. So that's Aristotle. Now we go forward 2,000 years or so. Yeah, they probably used meta somewhere in those 2,000. Well, at least the Greeks certainly used meta since it was just a word in their language. But it turns out the guy who first popularized meta as a prefix in the mathematical world was this famous mathematician, David Hilbert. A German mathematician who's known for Hilbert spaces, among other things. But in 1920, his big project was what he called metamathematics. This was a project to use mathematical methods to actually study mathematics, reflecting on reflection. And in doing that,